challenge that the Seahawks faced, right? What problems were they dealing with in terms of bringing that fan data together into a place where they could give the Seahawks fans a great experience and all the other fans a bad experience? Just kidding, we want them all to have a good experience. The second is, what did that cause for them, right? What was the pain? What was they going through? What was it keeping them from doing? And then we'll dig into the thing everybody wants to know about. What's the solution? How does it work technically? How does it bridge in data from Snowflake? How does it work with Snowflake? And then I'll have one more thing for you at the end I think is gonna excite everybody here. And finally, we'll talk about the results. These are super exciting. They probably already delivered a better experience without you even knowing it for those of you who have been to a game. And we'll show you what that looks like in reality. So first of all, tell me if this looks familiar. Spreadsheet of emails and a lot of hope. But they had a problem that was really keeping them from being able to properly communicate with their customers. Quick show of hands. How many people in here have more than one email address? All right, if you're not raising your hand, I know you're lying because you all have jobs and you're all here, right? We all have a work email, we all have a personal email. Problem is, the Seahawks were basing their entire notion of fan identity off of email address. Can we immediately match an email address to another email address, an exact match? So you can already see how that's kind of a problem. Right? Another show of hands, who's ever been to a sporting event with a work group, right? You get brought to a suite, something like that. How many of you have had more than one personal email? How many of you have been fans of a sports team for longer than you've had the email that you have now? Okay, so you are all the problem. So I appreciate that, because the second thing that did is that kept them from being able to link that ticketing data, their season ticket data, their wait list data, with the food and bev interactions, with their merch purchases. For those of you who don't know, the NFL merch predominantly runs through Fanatics. And the Seahawks, like every other NFL team, get a feed from Fanatics with those purchases, with those information. It's only as valuable as what you can actually link. Throughout the business, it caused a lack of confidence in fan profiles. Right? We didn't know that we were looking at a unified full view of the fan. We didn't know that we were capturing that suite interaction as well as that individual ticket behavior, as well as that waitlist behavior, and that one time you brought a group of friends for a fun, bachelor party, bachelorette, something like that. And it was hurting the people that I like the most, the nerds, right? The people that are hands on the keyboard, the people that are getting those tickets and saying, hey, I need you to run 15 different SQL queries just to get me to a list of 2,500 customers I can target with this suite promotion, right? It was costing them in terms of labor. It was taking days, if not weeks sometimes, to get to the data they needed to make a decision. And oftentimes, by the time they got that data, the need for the decision was already passed. So that's what it cost them, right? Broken coverage. Yeah, I put some puns in there, guys. Just let me have them, right? The most valuable fans have the messiest data. Think about this. We talked about everybody that raised your hand. Now, that doesn't really impact the Seahawks if you don't interact with them very often. But if you interact with them often, if you're a super fan, if you're coming to the website, if you're engaging with field marketing events, you're creating a lot of digital mess that lives within that data. And those people that interact most frequently are also the ones that are the most valuable, right? So they were having a problem that compounded at the top end of that pyramid in terms of fan value and weren't able to solve it. Personalization was blocked. The best they could do is they knew you like the Seahawks. They might know who your favorite player is, but they really couldn't personalize in a really meaningful way that was bringing new people into the stadium, new people onto the wait list, and also getting them to spend more money once they're in the stadium. For those of you not familiar with sports teams' business, right, season tickets are great, single tickets are great, but what they really want to do is drive that overall fan value up. They want to get you in buying these jerseys, they want to get you in getting that second beer, that third hot dog, and really drive up that value while you're in the stadium, while you're on their property. Analytics, untrusted, right? How can I tell you that my 5,000 most valuable season ticket holders are actually these 5,000 people if I don't know what merch they're buying, what food and bev they're buying, right? If you're a season ticket holder, you might have the cheapest season tickets in the stadium, like I did for my soccer team, but you might buy so much merch at every time you walk into that stadium that you're a wildly valuable customer, a wildly engaged fan. And engineering, again, was stuck in mundane, repeatable tasks that they wanted to offload, that they wanted to get off their plate. So, spoiler alert, the solution was us, Amperity. Amperity is a customer data platform, a composable customer data platform that really serves customer data tasks across the full life cycle of customer data. So we make it easy to ingest your data with a schema agnostic pattern that doesn't require you to reformat, transform data before you bring it to Amperity, before you access it in Amperity. We access that data directly from Snowflake via secure data sharing, and I'll tell you a little bit more about how we can get even closer to your data at the end of our talk today. Once we bring that data in, we've got a patented identity resolution system. We don't use any outside data. We use, the magic was within your data all along, right? So we're able to take those signals that exist within your data, those messy emails, those different contact points that might be hard to match, and bring them together. We create out-of-the-box customer views and make it easy to customize the data model that meets the needs of sports teams, travel and hospitality, financial services, all across the board, and accelerate this dramatically, because there are unique problems in customer data that you've probably experienced as you've gone through your project to centralize on Snowflake. The number of people I've talked to this week that have said, well, we're in year 1, year 2 of our Snowflake migration. Yeah, the customer data is the thing that's really holding us up. And we'll talk a little bit about some of those unique problems and how we solve them. On top of that, we give the ability to then explore that data asset you've built and then go activate off of that data asset you've built. As you would expect through drag and drop audience building tools, but as is legally required for me as a SaaS vendor to say, of course, we also provide AI in the platform. The most exciting thing to maybe a few of you in this room might be that we also layer an MCP on top of all of this. It's customer data aware, and that MCP can manage both data operations on the data foundation side, as well as exploring, manipulating, activating that data. So it works for data engineers, it works for marketers, and I would say it's the fastest adopted thing that we've ever put out from an Amperity perspective, and I can't get people on the preview fast enough. So, step 1, connect the data. I mentioned that we work directly with Snowflake. We utilize secure data sharing so that we can read those tables directly from within Snowflake and access them within Amperity. When we talk about the 3 minutes piece, this is where this comes from. From the time that we set up that secure data share, or rather the Seahawks set up that secure data share within their environment, to the time that that data was available in Amperity to start running identity operations was 3 minutes. So it really cut down the data operations workflow. We didn't have to pre-transform data. We didn't have to pre-cleanse data just to be able to leverage that data and build that unified profile. So we enable that within Snowflake. This is within Amperity. You just select the tables that you want, and boom, we're off to the races. Now, just bringing the data to a place where we can access it, bringing the data to the place where we can manipulate it, not enough. Because we still have that problem I talked about, the emails, the phone numbers, the birth dates, all of these messy pieces of human data that cause us problems. And that's where we come in. So Amperity has a really unique way of bringing data together from an identity perspective. You've probably seen a lot of identity solutions that say we've got a third-party data set that covers the entire population of America, and we're going to use that combined with your data to tell you exactly who your customers are. I used to work in third-party data, and if any of you have previously worked in third-party data, you know that's a little fraught, right? You can learn a lot about customers and you can infer with third-party data, but using it for their core identity to understand who they truly are can be fraught. And a lot of companies don't want their data meshed up in that way in the first place. So we use signals that exist entirely within your own data set to be able to join where we don't have a linking key. I'm gonna come over here now. Folks over here, get me? Where we don't have a linking key, right? We might have a CRM record with one key, a mobile ad ID, a cookie ID, all of these different digital identifiers. And then maybe some of them have rich PII associated with them. And what Stitch does is it looks through those patterns in human data. Those sorts of things such as having the same handle across multiple email addresses. And it gives you a shifting rule set that says, well, if we always try to match on email, we're gonna fail. But if we never match on email, we're also gonna fail. So it looks through all of the data that it has for every source record that we can associate to these individuals, and then evaluates them one by one across every different dimension of personally identifiable information we have. So that you can match a J Doe to a Jane Doe, so that you can match marcus.owens@amperity.com to marcusowens@gmail.com, and maybe if you're lucky, bridge through another identifier to my college email, dmbmark@uga.edu. Go Dogs, go Dave Matthews Band. This comes together into a singular profile for Jane, for your fan, for your customer. And this Amperity ID is a net new ID that we generate in Amperity. It's unique to every individual customer at Amperity. So my Amperity ID for the Seahawks is different than my Amperity ID for the Ravens. So you're not working with a co-op, you're not worried about data leakage, anything like that. This is your own ID. This ID can serve a lot of different purposes. For one, we're gonna add it as a column on every piece of data that you pass us. And when we bridge those tables back to Snowflake, you can leverage that Amperity ID to then use in your models, to use in activation, etc. Some of our customers, like Dick's Sporting Goods, actually use it in an even more operational way. So if you have an athlete ID at Dick's Sporting Goods, that is one-to-one linked with your AMP ID. And that helps them bridge across Dick's Sporting Goods, Game Changer, and now Foot Locker, right? So you can see how that Amperity ID, not just for a sports team, can really extend the view of your customer by bringing together all these records. And the second thing that's great about this is a non-destructive process. When I merge these records, when I create that golden record, I maintain all of this lineage and all of this heritage, because I might come to you tomorrow and give you a piece of data that you need 11-year-old data to match me with. And that's really important, because if I collapse these records and I try to evaluate this one against the collapsed profile of Jane, it's not gonna work. I'm not gonna make that match, and I'm not gonna understand who that fan is and be able to engage with them. This creates a first-party identity graph that you own, that the Seahawks own, that they can leverage at the ID graph layer for a lot of different purposes. Now, the Seahawks are focused on using us from an identity perspective, right? Each part of the platform is independently available from a composable perspective. However, we also give tools to build that full customer 360 around this notion of ID. We also allow you to have multiple versions of identity within Amperity. So what do I mean by that? I've talked a lot about probabilistic techniques to bring data together, and some of you are probably thinking, Marcus, I can't have that. At least for some use cases, I need a one-to-one deterministic match on loyalty ID, season ticket holder ID, whatever that might be. You don't have to throw away the possibilities of a more probabilistic ML strategy to have that deterministic, strong match against your customers for those more operational use cases. Within this toolkit, it's not just a darkroom environment. You don't just yeet your data into here and get out an identifier. You have full control over what's going on in this environment. So you can set your own rules about how the data is matched before it even gets to Amperity's AI ML stitch process. You can also see full transparency into why those connections were made. See down to the individual test level where tests succeeded and where tests failed for individual matched pairs. You can fully control that. We give you a benchmarking within the platform that helps you identify issues within the data, such as addresses that are populated or common across too many accounts. And oh, by the way, if you're thinking my data's too messy for this, I've got a lot of bad data, Seahawks, I've got a whole lot of Marshawn at Marshawn.com, people just throwing in emails what they want to, right? Stitch automatically cleans the data before it goes through the identity resolution process. So we're gonna strip out any of those bad indicia that might cause an over-clustering, an over-match of people, simply because people have given you bad data. And it helps you throw those values out and lets the good values surface to the top. The last step here is an easy step. We bridge that data right back to Snowflake. And what I mean by that is as soon as we generate those assets, from identity resolution, you're gonna get your own first-party identity graph. You're gonna get a full lineage of every change in an identity graph. By the way, most of our customers run Stitch at least daily, the full FAT process, and that daily process sets them up for real-time identity recognition whenever we see one of those identifiers during the course of the day. But the fact that I'm building these assets within an environment that's immediately bridged back to you means that as soon as that customer 360 is updated, so are the models that I'm using and that I'm running on that data in Snowflake. So are all of the pieces of data, all of the activations, all of the suppressions. So when I buy that single ticket, and I'm a season ticket holder and I'm for whatever reason getting promoted here, I can suppress those advertisements and make sure that I'm not sending ads meant for single ticket buyers to season ticket holders. This is really powerful for Seahawks because they don't have to leave Snowflake to work with the data that Amperity is creating. So this can feed into Snowflake, Snowflake Cowork. This can feed into all of the tools within Snowflake that they're familiar with using without having to change the habits, without having to change the workflows of day-to-day users. So what did they get out of it? 61% fan duplication rate. What I mean by this, they passed us 18.3 million records. I think it's up to 18.5 now. And we reduced that to 6.6 million records. Now, before you say, well, hold on a second, I want to have 18.3 million fans, I don't want to reduce that down, right? You can report on whatever number you want, but this helped them get a much better view, a much better idea of their fans, right? So what that means is, on average, each fan had at least 3 records within their system that they thought were individual records for that fan. They were analyzing wrong, they were activating too wrong, they were wasting money on paid media. They found 5,000 newly contactable fans. This seems like a small number when you think about how many fans they have, but what this means is these were orphan records that were high value records that didn't have the contact data on them that they needed to be able to reach out to that fan, either on a one-to-one basis or from a marketing perspective. So now they're able to actually reach out to those fans, communicate with those fans, and this has had a demonstrable uptick, not in season ticket sales yet, because the wait list is so big. So for any of you on the wait list, we're trying to get that down for you. But huge uptick in the amount of waitlisted fans. 221,000 buyers that were purchasing merch and tickets that they were not aware were cross buyers in the past. This is huge, right? Because we know there's only so much money a team can make from you getting you in the door. We got to get you to buy the jerseys. We got to get you to buy the scarves. Why does the NFL have scarves now? I'm a soccer fan. We'll talk about it later. And they're updating that fan identity daily. So that means that as soon as this change it comes into the environment, we're processing that, we're running it through that same stitch process, and we're able to see that fan identity change and market to that person appropriately, personalize to that person appropriately. This doesn't just work for sports. We're getting the tail end, we're in the home stretch, folks. This doesn't just work for sports. We got customers across every vertical. Travel and hospitality, you can imagine how this problem happens, right? Same, I'm not gonna make you raise your hands again, right? But a lot of you probably traveled here through Navin or Concur or something like that, where you use your work email, and you also have a loyalty membership under your personal email. It extends really across the board. And one thing to point out, while the Seahawks are using this primarily for identity, a lot of our customers also use this on the activation front to be able to push those audiences out to Salesforce Marketing Cloud, Braze, Meta, all the different destinations you want to be talking to your customers at. And we see massive returns on that front as well, because there's so much that foundational identity task solves for us when it comes to being able to accurately reach somebody in a paid media destination, being able to message to the right email or the right SMS phone number at the right time. So this is but wait, there's more. So this is the exciting thing for everybody here that's got a Snowflake investment. Traditional SaaS, right? Compute and storage up in our cloud, we're running that there, we're taking care of that for you. And that today is how the Seahawks work with us. They bridge that data in, right? That data stays in Snowflake. We read that data, we create new assets, but when we write for those of you interested, Parquet files that we write to service the front end on Amperity in the back end, we're writing that to our storage and bridging that back out to them from a Snowflake perspective. For customers that want that data to stay wholly within their storage, we can just plug your hard drive in where ours was, right? So we can take your AWS, your Azure Blob, put our storage on that, so that when we're writing those files, none of that data is leaving your environment. It's just the compute still being managed in our cloud, right? So if you want to offload that compute from a cost perspective. And then finally, what we're announcing today is bring your own compute. We can run fully within your Snowflake environment. So for those of you in protected industries, for those of you where no copy is a religion, right? This is the ability to run everything you saw today within Snowflake Compute. If I've got any Snowflake reps out there, of course, that uses Snowflake credits, but that's a really great possibility for you where you couldn't possibly do this in the past without that data leaving your environment, and now you can. So, that's it for the session. For those of you who are not QR averse, I also help lead our return on customer data team. This is a little survey-based thing that we also turn into a full-on workshop. If you want to scan that QR code, it'll walk you through some dynamics of where we might be able to help you from a customer data perspective. And if you fill it out, you might get to have me come on site and run a discovery session with you. The output of this is a really helpful guide to where you might find value from a customer data solution and where you should kind of maybe not spend as much of your time. And I mentioned we're over there in the back corner at 1317. We've got some pretty cool dog toys. If you have an aggressive dog, they're going to get torn up. But if you don't like the Seahawks, that might actually be a huge benefit for you. Great. I really appreciate y'all coming today. If you do have any other questions, they don't want us to take them here. So I'm going to lead everybody Pied Piper style over to our booth. And I really appreciate it. Have a great day, everyone.